is throw this open to the audience. We have two people with microphones, one on one side, one on the other. If anyone who would like to contribute puts a hand up, I'll point to them, and then our microphone bearers will bear the microphone. Let's start with the lady in the check, to whom I'm pointing there.
I'm quite amazed that a 19th century writer like Conrad has not been mentioned in this context. And for Nostromo in particular, I would like to nominate him posthumously, unfortunately, for the Orwell Prize, and I'd like the panel to comment on that.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, Nostromo, secret agent, under Western eyes. Yeah, definitely. I think actually, I had in my list of books, which I jotted down, but I didn't tell. I had put Conrad down. I think you're absolutely right. He was someone he was responding to, and the secret agent is very, very a marvelous picture of the spy operators among them.
And the extent to which his work has been continuously reinterpreted, I think, is the measure of how controversial it is as well, even now. I know we live in a time when political has become synonymous with controversial almost. This is one of the reasons we're struggling with this definition. Almost it has become a word for something that we don't all agree on. I mean, people, with notable exceptions, don't write books about gravity because we all believe that it exists and that it works in a Newtonian fashion. But if you're talking about something which is at the core of something like Heart of Darkness, set in the Belgian Congo, the racial issues that are addressed in that have made him an incredibly controversial and therefore political novelist. Now, I mean, his work is there are places where you can't mention his name. I've been to places in the States where I've been talking about political novels, and you just get hissed, booed if you mention him as a great novelist. It's an incredibly politicized figure.
But I do think, Heart of Darkness is very interesting, and I think it was definitely ahead of its time. I think some of the debate and some of the reworking of it has actually failed to acknowledge the fact that the gaze which Conrad was then casting on that society was far beyond what other people were prepared to look at. That journey down the river and the way that he depicted the characters on the bank was not the sort of thing that people were really picking up from, I think, another sort of 20, 30 years. So I do think that he is both serious and political.
I read Conrad in my teens, and I just read them I read them for the story, and I loved them passionately, but I have no sense of them being political at all. Because I wasn't political, and I think that's another thing that's very important in this is that the reader constructs the novel just as much as the writer does in a way. And so the way that one reads George Eliot or Golding or Jane Austen or Conrad, and very much depends on what you as a reader bring to it, as well as what the novelist has put there.
Now, while we carry the mic, first to the man in vertical stripes, followed by, right at the front, the man in horizontal stripes. I'd just like you to ask you to yourselves this question. Could I enjoy, benefit, and entirely understand a political novel with whose politics I, in fact, completely disagreed? But now to the man in vertical stripes.
Thank you. You've largely talked about the implicitly political, but there is clearly a subgenre of the explicitly political. And none of those I would see as very significant in that. Names have come up, for example, Solzhenitsyn, Kursler, or occasionally a novelist whose total oeuvre is wider, but finds a particular subject that makes him write an explicitly political one. For example, Robert Penn Warren, who turned the real-life political career of Huey Long into his woody star in All the King's Men. And a subgenre within the subgenre of the explicitly political are those novelists who decide to picture some real-life characters, but wrap them up a little. For example, H.G. Wells in New Machiavelli, where you have two characters who are clearly the werewolves. And Robert Blake turned up in his, when he was working on his biography of Disraeli, an unfinished fragment of a novel Disraeli left, in which the central character is clearly one in which he's working out all his animus towards Gladstone and begins to depict this, in his view, sinister and peculiar figure.
Gentleman at the front here, the mic is just coming to you. And after that, it'll be the lady far over there at the back.
I'm also a little disturbed that, to me, the greatest 19th century English political writer, Anthony Trollope, has not been mentioned. There is a difference, in my view, between writing about politics and about sociology. Most of what we've heard from the panel this morning has largely been about sociology, about the relationship between people and the relationship between classes. But Trollope wrote about the actual working of politics. And that, I think, is a fascinating subject which I would like to hear the panel's view on.
Thank you.
Better class of audience in Buxton.
I think we should just let them take over. We can go to the bar.
Any thoughts on Trollope?
No.
Well, the way we live now is a great political novel. Yes, there's no question. And I've never read the Palace, as I must confess, but apparently that's also very. So that's all about the Disraeli. There is a thing about the Disraeli. But the way we live now could have been written yesterday. It's a marvelous picture of society.
Yes, there's even, I forget which Trollope novel, there's a character who's obviously Conrad Black.